Hey, it's Lisa Wimberger here. I'm the founder of Neurosculpting, and I have helped thousands of people learn really powerful tools to regulate their minds and their bodies, including pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and those with serious stress-based illnesses. So I'm really excited to help you do the very same thing through education and some incredible guest experts. And together, we're going to discover the formula to unlock hope. So welcome. I am stoked today to have with me one of my besties and a woman I admire to the nth degree, Jody Levy, who is an artist, a designer, an educator, and an entrepreneur. And I'm going to read you her bio because it's very impressive. Her favorite artistic medium, which I think is really fascinating, is business, which I never considered an artistic medium until now. She's the founder and director and CEO of a series of companies dedicated to empowering people to be as healthy and happy as possible. And such enterprises include Watermelon Water, Lab Elemental Milk Cleanse, Neuropraxis, and she's the global director and CEO of Summit Endeavors, Summit Series, Summit Junto Forum, and she's also a partner and advisor to many category disrupting brands that include Lifeway, Gem and Bolt Mezcal, Bulletproof, The Well, so much more. Jody, I am so happy you made time for me today.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yay. I have so many questions. The gist of what I want our listeners to get out of this is an understanding of sort of what motivates you when you're reaching for hope, whatever hope is for you, what you are doing to foster that in others, because as a person fortunate enough to know you in business and outside of business, I see you creating artistically presented opportunities for hope for so many people, for your friends, your family, and for the people you serve. And I kind of want to dive into that. So I want to know what your relationship to that word is, that one word, hope. What does that mean to you as a starting point?
It's so interesting to me because I've never really contemplated this word.
Mm-hmm.
But I so live in it, in the energy of it. So I have always been really into the concept and driving force of belief. And while my beliefs might be different than the next person, I've always been really attracted to people who are so dedicated to what they believe in. And I think for me, as I've been contemplating hope and this language that you're working in, for me, it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a knowingness. It's like part science, part art. It's like the alchemy of kind of knowing that you're moving through something or towards something, but in the unknown of it. And I think it's that balancing act of having holding hope while assessing information, and kind of that head to heart space where this sort of no matter how hard, no matter what comes at you, you just have this belief that either it's going to be okay or to keep going, or that there's an end that you may not be able to see, but a knowingness that it's there.
So it feels like when I'm hearing you talk about hope and when I'm seeing you kind of alchemize it in the real world, because I do get to see that, I'm almost interpreting it as a process for you. It's like that artistic process that you engage in all the time. It's the alchemy in the process. So I think a lot of people feel like hope is like, oh, a thing bestowed upon you. And that's not how I see you using it. I see you using the energy of it in a process. And, you said it's part science, it's part art, it's that alchemy, and it's an orientation towards something in the unknown. So how has that shown up for you? Because you have done more, you have accomplished more than most humans I personally know. I'm not saying everyone out there, but certainly the humans that I know, you are at the top of my list of, I don't know how she does what she does. So how does this process of dedication to move through the unknown towards something, how does that play out in how you show up for your businesses and for your relationships?
So I think there's a couple things. When I hear you say that to me, it certainly is a process, but I also wonder if it's like more of a way of being. Like, I think
What's the difference? What's the difference there for you?
well, the process is almost like the mechanics of how I apply it to the certain things, whether it's an endeavor or like how I spend my time or my energy, right? But I feel like my way of being might be kind of grounded in what you and I are defining as hope, like a hopefulness. And I think the answer to part of your question, which is like why I do what I do and why I love to work and the places where I know I find joy in creating things. You know, it's partially because I'm an artist truly by spirit, and partially because I got through a tough time in my life that had to deal with my health, and this way of being in, you know, an understanding of my belief, which is, I think, inextricably connected to this concept of hope, was what got me through it and what allows me to wake up every day with the energy to keep going. So I think it's all kind of connected to the concept and to the root.
Where did that come from? I mean, is that something you feel like, I don't know, there might be people listening that want to know, okay, so now how do I do that? How do I get it? Did you have to cultivate that? Was it effortful, or was this something that you just started accessing inside of you just intuitively?
Well, this really gets into a question about being an artist, I think. You know, when I talk about my favorite creative medium being business, the concept of that really comes from, I can't help but to create. There's this thing in me, this like insatiable desire to make and to tell stories and to, you know, express using line and mark and matter and represent energy and time or timeless.
What happens to you when you can't do that? If you're like, if life is prohibiting you from doing that, what happens to you?
There's like literally nothing that can prohibit me from this. Like whether I'm home, you know, painting on giant rolls of cold press, you know, watercolor paper that's from France in best of times, or I'm like, you know, sitting in a random anywhere with a scrap of paper and a pen, like it's just something that happens. So I think there's the intrinsic part of myself that just has to create. And then there's this other side of myself, which I have this really intense relationship to time. Time is totally my love language. You know this about me. Like the ability.
That's why I freaked out this morning. You know, truth be told, you know, Jody and I touched base this morning, and I thought I was 3 minutes late for recording, and I know your relationship to time, and I was like, oh my God. Fortunately, I wasn't late, but yes, I know it's your love language. And how is that playing out?
Well, I think that that's the place where I love like creating things with other people and being able to, you know, look at time in different ways that allows solutions to problems, allows me and the people around me to solve things and create things as a well-oiled symphony, so to speak. And I think that my superpower is my ability to kind of conduct with the invisibility of time.
Absolutely. I've seen you do that, like exactly the word I would use is conductor, because I honestly don't know how you do it, because you can hold so many different moving parts and pieces in this in one container in your mind while still doing a lot of other things. and still be completely aware of the necessary efficiencies. And I know that comes from your relationship to time, and that's all invisible. And I think that's part of the magic people see in you, is like, how do you do what you do? Okay, so you've got this relationship to time, which gives you the space to create solutions and to create things. And you've chosen to create things that actually shift people. So, can you talk about some of your projects that, because they've enabled you to show up as the artist, how are those product services endeavors shifting people?
Yes. And the end result, I think, is very similar to the process of getting into it and through it also. The connection between time and hope is, I think that when you can hold the intention of where you're going and the belief of what is possible, that defines what hope is to me in the everyday. And a big part of that is knowing that we can feel really good, that we can have a sense of purpose, that if there's imbalances in our physical bodies, we have the power to rebalance them. And I believe that it's both understanding of, what's possible in science, as well as the intuitive understanding that we can have positive impact and control over forces that are more invisible, which all sort of fall into this umbrella that we're talking about, which allows people to feel their best and be really optimized. And so for me, I have a handful of businesses outside of, the ecosystem of Summit, which you mentioned, which gets most of my attention these days, that are committed to helping people balance their bodies from, biotoxic illness. I'm so proud to say that you and I have an app that allows people to repattern their midbrain out of stress and trauma and PTSD triggers, currently associated with biotoxic illness, but we've got big plans for new libraries coming,
I
everybody.
can't wait. I can't wait.
It's
Neuropraxis. This is our baby together, which I feel so grateful to create with you, because I get to be in, by being in your proximity, right, in your sphere of energy while we create this, I also get to be in your flow and relationship to time. And I'm taking notes. I am.
And I get to be in yours.
Okay. Then great. It's mutual. So, but how, so we've got the biotoxic thing that's helping people, but your other projects too serve in such big ways. So can you talk a little bit about maybe how those other things, those other projects you're doing are serving people, and how that comes out of your relationship to time and hope?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of my time working on one of my endeavors that is connected to the power of education, entertainment, and play, and really getting people like present in what they do. Summit is an ecosystem of artists and creators and, investors and entrepreneurial minds that come together and try to solve problems and try to think about what the planet needs and what the community needs to make best of our experience on this precious planet. And it's kind of a culmination of intellect, community, art, and kind of those invisible forces of energetics and consciousness, for lack of a better way of saying what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super proud that we, kind of made it through this pandemic and are now reconnecting. The magnet is turned on, and, the community is getting together around the globe.
In what ways are you doing it differently now? Because obviously the pandemic changed things for everybody. What are you seeing now that you're jumping back in? Are you seeing a different texture to things? Like, what do you notice?
I think that what I notice is more about coming back from this time, the meaning and the heart connections and like the realness of certain spaces and platforms, and the way that some ecosystems, so to speak, connect certain types of people that have a seriousness and a commitment and a belief that is in alignment with one another. I think we're all realizing that before the pandemic, there was so much going on. It was all sort of blurring. Similar people were found in different places, and the energy, the boundaries were, it was blurry between everything. And now the distinction between the different types of environments and the people that are getting pulled together and the types of work that they're doing when they're together and then when they all, go their separate ways. It's different. It's more intentional. It's more precise. And I think that's a real gift, that, things were starting to get very blurred and very busy. And now we are kind of all coming back together and remembering the uniqueness of the different environments.
And I almost wonder, because I experienced this when I was at Summit just recently. I experienced everybody lit up, like lit up and thirsty for knowledge or experience or connection, and thirsty for laughter and play and art. And it was so evident. And I almost wonder if, I mean, do we have to go through these really bad times so that we can get back to honoring and savoring being present in the moment and connecting in that way? I mean, obviously you had to go through your own health issues to come out, I don't know, I'm just going to put words out there, stronger, clearer, more intentional, or maybe just different versions of those things, because maybe you already were that. So did we as a group of people have to go through our own sort of healing crisis so that we could get to that clarity of this is important, these connections are important, this information is important, this time, that this limited resource we have is important? I almost feel like we did have to, but I don't know. How did that play into where we are now?
I mean, I think what we just went through was unprecedented and hopefully will remain that way. It was
Amen.
extreme, like beyond measure. And I think you and I made the most of it, and we were in creation mode and we launched things together and apart. But we also saw a lot of the people close to us in a lot of pain. And, I think life is about that constant equilibrium. I do think that there's a weighing of a balancing of scales always kind of, in motion. And I think that those of us that are brave enough to walk through it and really believe in, like, what the power of what's coming when you can kind of, stand into it, or however, for me, I have this visual of like kind of like moving through things, and I just force myself to keep going, and I kind of get out the other side knowing that there's going to be light. But that's harder for some people than others. I definitely think that, we have to recognize the opportunities to grow and learn, and it's up to us to take them. And I think that the people that I really revere in my life are those that take those on and step into them and, use them to learn more. But there's a lot of people that, really have a hard time doing that and end up suffering greatly.
I love what you just said. You said hope is the belief in the power of what's coming. This this is kind of what I felt when you and I first started talking about the need for neuropraxis. And, I'll set a little context, but then I'll ask you to just tell your story around it. But so neuropraxis came out of me and Jody working together and seeing and tangibly experiencing the belief in the power of what's coming, except we went to the space of we can define what's coming. And when we started working together and started, seeing the power of what you and I could do together, I remember, Jody, you said we should make an app, and I didn't even think about it. I just, yes, came out of my mouth immediately because of who you are. And I don't say yes to everybody. I certainly don't say yes to everybody, but there was this way, like you said, your way of being in the world, where you weren't toxic positivity. You were a realist, but you were also had a strong, unstoppable belief in magic, which I find that combination to be amazing, right? People who can live pragmatically in the world around them and function, but also hold magic and use it in the way they show up. And so it was an instant yes. And this project that we're doing together, that I would love for everyone listening right now to go to Neuropraxis app and experience it. But this project is to be of service to people who maybe can't touch that hope and that alchemy space the way Jody can, or the way I can, because we've sort of like made it a practice. This is for people who really need the support. So I would love for you to talk about Neuropraxis a little bit. What's your relationship to it?
Yes. Well, I still use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Me
as
too.
part of my daily practice. Yeah. So first of all, Neuropraxis is you can access it in two ways. One, on the iPhone store. So if you're an iPhone user, you can go to the App Store and download it. And if you're not an iPhone user, you can go to the website and you can subscribe on the website. Or our other platforms are coming, we promise. So I grew up in Michigan and went to school in upstate New York and did not grow up with tick awareness. And I was in art school in Saratoga Springs, New York, and I spent every day in the woods because I was like a proper Michigan nature girl, and probably was being, nibbled on by ticks all the time, not paying attention to how dangerous that was. And now we know a lot more about tick-borne illnesses. But I went 18 years undiagnosed with Lyme disease. Throughout that period of time, I had been hospitalized. I went through, X, Y, and Z. I knew something was wrong. Everyone in my life just thought I was like working too hard and doing too many crazy things and building too many companies. But it turned out that I actually had 14 different types of tick-borne illnesses, Lyme disease. And when I finally figured that out, it was at a point in time where I also had exposure to toxic mold.
The killer combo, by the way, Lyme and mold combo, is just brutal for people.
Yeah. And so I was incredibly dedicated to not having to live the way that I was. I lost a lot of my memory. I had a bunch of, symptoms that I know, I don't love talking about, but I was like unwilling to live that way. And I was also unwilling to believe that I couldn't cure it because everybody, just has to kind of live with this pain and suffering. So I set out with a very, very quiet, very, very committed adventure to get better and get fully better.
You called yourself the CEO of your own health care.
Very much so. That's ultimately like it was no different than any business turnaround I've ever done. So I effectively did that, which is the reason why I wake up every day, excited to create and build and, do things with my teams around the world. It's also why I take my self-care really, really seriously. So as hard as I work, is as hard as I play, is as hard as I rest. But as I was along that journey, I cleared my system of mycotoxins, which are what ultimately build up in your system from exposure to toxic mold. I cleared my body of all 14 tick-borne illnesses. I rebuilt my gut, and I was still dealing with some pain. And so one of my, I've sort of a team of secret weapons, and one of them, who was the person that, introduced Lisa and I, she shared with me that there was this connection to suffering and pain patterns and limbic looping in the brain. And that's what ultimately led me to Lisa's work, which ultimately led me to Lisa's office on a Halloween a bunch of years ago, where
With
I
the
walked.
best outfit ever. Oh my God. First time I met Jody, she was wearing this amazing unicorn onesie outfit. And like, she had me at just walking in the door. I was like, oh my God, I'm sold. I'm sold on this woman.
Yeah, we were, it was instant. It was
Mm-hmm.
before I walked in the door in my,
Yeah.
unicorn onesie, but that one really sealed the deal for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we ended up on the floor laughing in the first
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes. But what was even more incredible was Lisa and I did 4 sessions together over the course of like 1 month. And in these 15 to 25-minute guided sessions, the pain that I had come in for was gone and
Mm-hmm.
has never come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so in February, right before the lockdown due to the global pandemic, I was on an airplane. I sat down and I wrote notes about every person I had ever met in Lyme and mold doctors' offices around the entire world. And I recalled every symptom I had ever heard from people, which was like the worst thing I've ever had to do. And then Lisa and I sat and we outlined this whole world of modules, went into the studio, recorded them all, thought that we were kind of creating this app for this tiny little slice of people with Lyme disease and mold toxicity. And then all of a sudden, 4 weeks later, the whole world was dealing with biotoxic illness.
It was
And
crazy.
yeah, and what is known as like co-infections and viruses and, fear of and coping with and everything from physical ailments to, psychological trauma. And it's been a couple of years since we launched, and we have people writing in all the time telling us how they've been using the app and the modules and how it's transformed their lives and how they're out of pain patterns and they're out of suffering. And nowadays they're usually just asking us for more.
And more is
They're
coming.
coming, I promise.
It's coming. It's coming. Well, one thing I want to jump in and say is that there's nothing wrong with launching businesses for the sake of return on investment. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's something magical about launching products, services, and businesses because it is just overflowing out of your personal transformation experience. And that's a different ball game. That's the kind of thing where you end up putting your heart and your soul and your time and your money into it in a way that is just so aligned with who you want to be in the world. And that's one of the things that got me so excited about working with you, is that it was coming from that place from both of us. Sometimes in partnerships, you're not on the same page with your why or your mission or what's motivated you. But in this case, it was so aligned with how I want to serve in the world and my personal transformation and your personal transformation that that when we started creating it, I could see, this is that hope thing, right? I could, with an intentional navigation towards something, I could see that there was more coming. I couldn't define the potential yet, but there was so much more coming because this was coming out of alignment. And the testimonials we're getting from people, we have people saying, I wake up and use this every single day. This wakes me up, or this puts me to bed at night. And it's just the tip of the iceberg with what we can do for people. I'm always so stoked about it. And you would think that I would be already tired of all the neurosculpting modules and meditations, but I'm not, because this work is just always unfolding. Where do you want to see neuropraxis go? Like, what's your vision for that?
I think that as we've seen how people use this and how directly a guided module that like you've created for people impacts people's experience of like day-to-day anxiety, optimizing our happiness, like believing that, we're going to be okay. I mean, I know for me personally, when something feels imbalanced or scary, or when I over index on like a worst case scenario, because, you like to point out that one of my best traits is my ability to, like mitigate risk and see worst case scenario because it makes me really good in business. But
Absolutely.
sometimes I over index on other things. There is like a calm that I carry with me, knowing that so much of this stuff lives in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and like we're wired and patterned, and that with this work, there's never going to be anything that we can't address.
Mm-hmm.
And that having that solution so close for people creates like takes a lot of the just the agony of the unknown out of it, and really does give people hope, truly. And so I think, as you know, I want to have modules that optimize performance. I want to have modules that are really like helping people navigate the stress and anxieties of this crazy world that we're living in. And I want to have libraries for people of all walks of life that are coping with social issues, economic issues, climate issues. Like there's so much that is very worrisome these days. And I think that being able to rewire our brains gives us a lot of comfort.
And takes the edge off the aloneness. I feel like it was already easy to feel alone in your own thoughts and in your own, the boxes we create. But then pandemic externally validated that story that you're alone. You have to isolate. You're alone. You want to be well. You have to be alone to do that. And that damaged people. Because we are social creatures, because we have a frontal brain that is designed to not want to be alone. In fact, it's designed to consider aloneness a life threat. So here we are with the whole world contributing to this story of I'm alone, and what Neuropraxis is doing, and also Jody, what you're doing in all your other endeavors, which are very socially bonding, is we are combating one of the most pervasive insults to the entire nervous system, to the entire species, which is this idea that we are alone. And we are not alone. We are so not alone that we miss the fact that there is no us in them. Technically, there isn't. There's just a we, and that we is the we of humanity. And you can you can nuance it, sure. Race, gender, socioeconomics, culture, religion, belief. Of course, those are nuances, but ultimately, you're made of interstellar stardust that is still left over from the Big Bang, just like I am. So if we really want to get nitty gritty, there is no such thing as alone, and Neuropraxis is reminding you of that. It's that support in your pocket when you get stuck in the aloneness of disease or chronic illness or depression or anxiety, or the potentially lonely path of an entrepreneur, which has a ton of mental challenges that go with it. And the other thing I wanted to say, which I noticed also, just being in the milieu of people at the forefront of their own self-growth, sometimes there is an assumption that maybe they don't need anything more. They've already gotten all these resources. They're so well resourced. And then yet, when they get a taste of self-directed nervous system regulation, when they get a taste of neuropraxis or neurosculpting, it's still a game changer for them, even though they're so well resourced. And that's always my litmus test of there's no end to the need for this. And I'm so excited to be putting libraries out there so that every walk of life is getting this kind of support, because there is no us in them. I know some of you right now listening are going to be really annoyed that I said that, and you may even take offense to it. But I'm going off physiology. I'm not going off the nuanced stories and experiences we have. I'm going off just pure physiology. We're a human species. Okay, so we're wrapping up on time. I would love it if you shared one gem or one thing you're excited about, or one, guys, you got to do this, and piece of advice.
I think the one thing that holds so true to everything we're talking about, how you and I, became soul sisters and co-creators, the body of work we're talking about as it relates to, like, hope and belief. And I'm a really big proponent in independent thinking. And so I think that what's more important now than ever is to figure out what it is that you truly believe in, and know what the outer limits of that are, know what the core of that is, and kind of create the operating agreement for your own way of being in relationship to yourself, in relationship to the people around us, in relationship to the work that you do, the people that you work with. And I think that the more that people can really define the boundaries of how they want to show up in the world, what they want to say yes to, what they want to say no to, like, what you're good at, what you're terrible at. I always ask people what they're bad at. Like, I think it's so telling when people are like, oh my God, I'm not good at this. I do this all the time, because it allows people to know how to show up, right? But I think when we can really know what our belief system is, it allows us to always be further refining our own user manual. And it allows us to understand how to show up and, like, what we believe in and what we're hopeful of, so we can get through anything. It takes kind of like the unknowns out of it. And that innately is a bit of a belief that everything is always in balance. And so when something's out of balance, we know how to trust ourselves to bring it back into balance. And it might be slower than what we want, and it might be more painful than what we expected. But I think that's the thing that gives people the space to get through anything. And that's been the biggest learning of my adventure, and what continues to give tenfold, in new and different ways. And it's kind of the only constant is that, like, we're always having to recalibrate and rebalance to the environment around us, part of which we have control over, and part of which we can only control how we balance to.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I wrote down a bunch of gems that I'm taking with me, and hopefully you who are listening to this have in your mind some of the gems you're taking. So a couple of them for me are that hope can be sort of the way we orient in the unknown towards something. That time gives space for solutions and creation, and maybe defining and exploring our relationship to time can bring that online for us. That hope is the belief in the power of what's coming. And then you said something that just really struck me. And this is something that I just want to remind myself every day. You said you were unwilling to live a certain way. And so this idea of free will, this unwillingness to take what's handed to you and do nothing about it, that's potent for me. And then the last thing is to sort of define and know your operating agreement for your own way of being. I don't know that we all know that. I don't know that I've really explored all of the ways I show up, my boundaries. The operating agreement's key, right? So that was a big takeaway for me. All right, Jody, so how can people get more of, well, first of all, neuropraxis.com if you have a smartphone, and the App Store if you have an iPhone. But Jody, how can people get more of you and all your other projects?
Oh, I don't know. Just close your eyes and
That's what I do.
messaging totally.
Anytime I want more of Jody, I just close my eyes and just magically you're there.
Yeah.
Jody,
learn more about Summit at summit.co.
mhm.
Summit is an ecosystem that I am a partner in and I run. We have a ton of new content coming out from an event that you and I were just participated in.
Mhm.
There are a bunch of new offerings coming. We've got events, we've got trips, we've got an entire world dedicated to forum. So we pair groups of 7 like-minded people and they come together, in annual cycles and become.
My experience with Junto has been amazing. It gave me more than I was expecting.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's really powerful work. It's like, having your own personal advisory board.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real like alchemy again in how that group of people pairs people. So I think that for your listeners, that would be a really meaningful thing.
Yeah, I think so.
The milk cleanse, everybody should know about the milk cleanse. It is a really, really potent way to rebalance the physical and emotional body. We've been working very hard through the supply chain channels and it should be back in January. So for anybody whose bodies or whose guts need some balancing, it's really great. And yeah, there's lots more coming. So
yes, there's more coming. Jody, I love you so much. I'm so happy you made time today. And we will do more amazing things in the world together. And I can't wait to then have you back to talk about those things.
Yeah. And since we're live and, in an environment where lots of people are listening, why don't you tell us when everybody can expect the next 3 Neuropraxis libraries?
That is a fantastic question. The magic answer is ASAP.
I like that.
Yes, that's the
Maybe
answer.
like, Q1 of 2023.
Oh,
ladies and
maybe.
gentlemen, I give commitment here.
This is how Jody manifests everybody. She's like, how about we do it then? And I usually just go, okay.
Well, here's hoping, right, everybody?
Here's hoping. I actually do have ideas. But Jody, I just love talking to you. So I know that everyone listening also got some gems. So thank you so much for making time.
Thank you for having me. I love you too.
I love you. Thanks for listening to Unlock Hope. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we're at Neurosculpting Institute on Facebook, at Neurosculpting on Instagram. You can always reach out to us on our website, neurosculpting.com, and you can download our app, Neuropraxis. Stay well, everybody.